department in ADB, as well as the Korean Ministry of Economic and Finance, MOEF, and Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, MORIT, and the Korea Exim Bank, and KAIA, which is Korea Agency for Infrastructure Technology Advancement. I'd like to appreciate all the honorable participants as well. I could see for the entire sessions, there will be more than 50 different public and private sectors from Korea. And I understand that maybe Minister of Finance in Bangladesh is joining part of the session as well. Thank you again. Then let's begin the day one with a brief on schedule. There are mainly 3 sessions. First, for the scene setting, there are 2 opening remarks by MOEF and ADB, followed by ADB's procurement system and process. After the session, the first session, we will have a 5-minute long Q&A. And then for the session 2, CDI will present, share about the trust fund, followed by the session 3, which is ADB's operational priority number 4 for livable cities. And then after these 2 sessions, we will have another 25-minute long Q&A. For the first opening remarks, please let me introduce Mr. Lee Jong-hwa, Director General of Development Finance Bureau at MOEF. Thank you, Mr. Lee, and for your remarks, and floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Hong-Soo Lee. Mr. Robert Guild, Chief Sector Officer of Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department, ADB staff in charge of urban development, representatives from domestic organizations and companies, and ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to take part in today's Korea ADB Urban Development Forum. I also send my sincere appreciation to representatives from the ADB Urban Sector Group, the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, the Export-Import Bank of Korea, and Korea Agency for Infrastructure Technology Advancement for putting this event together. This forum, which will run for 5 days from today, is an event jointly planned in cooperation with Korean organizations and the ADB. This will serve as a venue for sharing the ADB's Cities Development Initiative for Asia, CDIA, and Korea's urban development experience, technologies, and expertise. Urban development is directly linked to sustainable growth and quality of life and has become a key issue in development cooperation. These days, a number of cities are encountering difficulties with climate change, natural disasters, and contagious diseases such as COVID-19. Against this background, greater attention has been paid to recovery in which cities are able to maintain their functions themselves. At the same time, there is a growing demand for pleasant and safe cities. In this context, I speak highly of the ADB's efforts to expand support for urban development through endeavors such as the CDIA. Urban development corresponds with future growth industries such as data hub platforms, smart water resources management, green energy, and smart transportation information systems. As such, it will help create economic growth engines in the post-COVID-19 era. During the period of industrialization over half a century, Korea successfully engaged with urban development and became an exemplary case. In response to rapid population growth and urbanizations, Korea improved sanitation facilities and housing conditions, extended transportation networks, and developed new cities. During this process, we have gained a great deal of urban development experience, expertise, and technologies. Recently, Korea is leveraging our robust ICT infrastructure to push for the creation of smart cities in which digital solutions are applied to development and operations. The urgent need to address climate change has become more prominent. As part of this effort, Korea is exploring carbon neutral cities that reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase carbon capturing, as well as hydrogen pilot cities that harness hydrogen energy in housing and transport. Based on this experience, the Korean government is making efforts to help foreign governments develop cities, especially in developing nations. As an example, the K-City Network project that began in January last year centered around Korea's experience in building smart cities. This project was launched in partnership with governments of cities overseas. Furthermore, we have held the World Smart City Expo since 2017 to share our experience in smart city policies and experiences from cities around the world. This year, we are going to hold the exhibition of a hybrid format of online and offline events from September 8th to 10th. Korea has been strongly supporting urban development in Asian developing nations. Through the E-Asia and Knowledge Partnership Fund, we have been financing numerous projects in relation to urban development. From this year, we are also participating in the CDIA on a pilot basis. Distinguished participants, I believe today's event will be an opportunity to broaden the understanding of Korea's experience and promising technologies and the Korean organizations and companies to make inroads into developing nations in Asia. I also look forward to event ultimately contributing to eco-friendly and sustainable urban development in developing nations in this region. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your kind words, including potential collaboration opportunities between Korea and ADB for sustainable development, considering climate change and disasters, so as to overcome the COVID-19 through the smart systems. Also understand the Korean government is supporting the low carbon and GHG emission by smart city policies, and also noted that the support through the E-Asia finance to the number of ADB's DMCs, including the CDIA's, the support to CDIA. Thank you again. And now, please let me invite Mr. Robert Geyer, who is the Chief Sector Officer in Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department in ADB. We are grateful to have you, Robert, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hong-Soo, and thank you, Mr. Lee, for those perceptive opening remarks. Greetings from the Asian Development Bank. It is my pleasure to welcome all participants to this Korea ADB Urban Development Forum, which will focus on knowledge sharing and business opportunities. Over the next 5 days, we will hear from Korean agencies and enterprises on how they can help cities in our developing member countries become more livable using smart technologies. And the forum will also provide an opportunity for Korean businesses to learn about ADB's projects and systems, which will help them fruitfully engage. Specifically, we will highlight ADB's operational priority on livable cities, Republic of Korea's experiences in important areas such as digital solutions for service delivery, integrated water management, energy management systems, and green public transportation, among others. And we'll go over ADB's procurement systems and processes. I thank the Export-Import Bank of Korea for co-organizing these sessions with us. And I'm sure that this forum will be of great help to cities in developing countries as they build back better after the pandemic. ADB's vision is to transform the cities of the region to be more green, competitive, inclusive, and resilient, or in short, more livable. In 2020, we committed $32 billion US to investments, of which about $3 billion was for the urban sector. ADB's urban portfolio is growing, indicating growing business opportunities for Korean businesses in the urban sector. There are several emerging areas which will be of even greater interest to Korean enterprises, such as digital solutions and smart technologies, affordable housing, sustainable tourism, low carbon development, urban mobility, municipal finance, and urban resilience, not only to climate and disaster risks, but also to future health risks. And through the Cities Development Initiative for Asia, we are working closely with secondary cities to prepare bankable and sustainable infrastructure investments and improve their capacities to access innovative sources and modalities of financing. This is all aligned with our long-term objective to improve the living conditions and environment in cities in Asia and the Pacific, especially for the urban poor. Now, how do we leverage Korea's experience? It offers a compelling story of growth that provides strong lessons in developing world-class infrastructure and services, mainstreaming digital solutions, promoting effective stakeholder engagement, fostering transparency and accountability, and reducing environmental impact. Building sustainable and safe cities requires knowledge in areas of urban planning, governance, resilience, and financial sustainability, in addition to building urban infrastructure. And here's what our developing member countries are eager to learn from Korea. This week's series will showcase those policy and practical lessons. Turning for a moment to procurement systems, ADB introduced major reforms in 2017. This has helped us in effective procurement of contracts and implementation of projects. Now, ADB uses a principles and risk-based approach to procurement, which is more responsive to the needs of our developing member countries. As we continue to implement projects and deliver commitments, we are always open to learning from our partners, including from the firms, agencies, and academic institutions in Korea. And as we anticipate funding support from the Republic of Korea eAsia and Knowledge Partnership Fund for CDIA, we're grateful for this opportunity to learn from them as well. Allow me to conclude by reaffirming ADB's commitment to making cities in our region more livable. For us to deliver this commitment, we must collaborate and learn from others' good practices. It is through knowledge exchange and mutual sharing that we can help ensure successful implementation of our mutual initiatives. So let me convey my best wishes for a successful forum and hope that the insights will be useful to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts, as well for your positive and warm remarks for highlighting the brief on CDI's mandates and ADB's procurement, also considering the leveraging the K experience with the strategies on how to mainstream it. Yeah, I understand that the collaboration with K agencies, no matter irrespective of whether it's private or public sectors, I think it will be really helpful to, how do I say, work with develop ADB's developing member countries. Thank you again, Robert. And we can move to ADB's procurement process and systems session for next 20 minutes. And please let me introduce Ms. Lila Mallory, Senior Procurement Specialist at PPFD and ADB. During her presentation, please use a chat box or raise your hand if you have any queries so that we can discuss the queries at the Q&A session. Mr. Liller, please proceed your brief.
Good afternoon, and thank you for that introduction. We'll wait for the presentation to come up. Okay. Thank you very much. So it is, first of all, good afternoon. My name is Leela Mallory. I am Senior Procurement Specialist with the Asian Development Bank, and I cover the Philippines portfolio. Today, I have been asked to present on doing business with ADB, but specifically with regards to consulting services. And please, at any point during the presentation, if you have questions, either raise your hand or otherwise, at the end of the presentation, if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, so quick introduction with regards to why you should pursue ADB financed contracts. But ADB really it's the gateway to new opportunities in a very fast and growing emerging economies across multiple sectors. I mean, Asia and the Pacific is growing at a very exponential rate, and so there's a lot of opportunities available. There's the availability and the security of funds because the funds are coming from the Asian Development Bank. ADB, as Robert Guild touched on, we updated our procurement policies and procedures to further enhance them and to align them with internationally accepted procurement procedures, as well as the other multilateral development banks. And specific risks related to transparency and fairness, as well as integrity and the risk pertaining to the procurement processes are mitigated through ADB's oversight. So from the procurement department, which I represent, we work very closely with our respective governments throughout the procurement process. And depending on the review modality, it's either done at the same time or after the contract's awarded. We provide so much support that it really does, we want to ensure that everything follows ADB's policies and procedures. So we have a very hands-on supportive relationship with our respective governments. Okay. So ADB's project cycle, I just wanted to quickly touch on this. We have different aspects of the project with regards to country partnership strategy, concept note, preparation, approval, implementation, and evaluation. I noticed that the slide is still stuck on the first one. Okay, thank you very much. Just one moment, apologies, I'm having a little bit of a glitch here. Okay. So I wanted to give a quick snapshot of our project cycle. What we have is we have the country partnership strategy, which covers 5 years and gives a very good understanding of the projects that are foreseen in the pipeline of that specific country and the different sectors. Now, all of this information is available on ADB's website. So what I recommend is that you familiarize yourself with our website. We have all the information available specific to the country, the projects that we have within the country and the procurement plans. And that will give you a very good overall view of what projects are foreseen in the country, what procurement activities are foreseen, and when they will come to fruition. Next slide, please. Okay. So the different modalities of engagement for consultants, just a little bit more information on exactly our involvement. So, as I mentioned, we have the country partnership strategy. We also have what we call the regional cooperation strategy, and that that's under the country partnership strategy and covers 3 years. And within that, it'll identify the different projects that are in the pipeline to be approved in that respective country. And so it really gives a good overview and understanding of what projects are foreseen and where your businesses would be interested in partaking in potential procurements relating to those projects. Next slide, please. One more, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have, I wanted to discuss here 2 different aspects. We have the TA consulting versus the loan and grant consulting. Okay, so in the technical assistance, what we call TA consulting, ADB is the client, and ADB undertakes the recruitment and signs the contract with the respective firm. Direct payment is made from ADB to the firm. Of course, we have provisions for privileges and immunities. There's a tax exemption in project country, as well as a complaints mechanism within ADB to address that. When it's loan and grant consulting, it is the borrower that's the client, and it is the borrower that undertakes the recruitment. Now, under exceptional circumstances, and usually it's lack of capacity in their respective executing agency, they might ask ADB to assist with their recruitment, which means that ADB will undertake the recruitment up until contract signing, after which the contract will be handed back to the borrower for them to sign with the firm. Generally speaking, it is this is an exception, as I mentioned, generally speaking, it is the borrower, so the respective country that does the recruitment. We provide an oversight role and a support role. The borrower pays directly to the firm. However, if the government requests, ADB can actually pay directly to the firm on behalf of the borrower. And specifically in the Philippines, we see quite a bit of that. The law of the borrower's country normally applies. So if you were to sign a contract with the government of the Philippines, it would be the laws of the Philippines that would apply. And complaints to the borrower, if there are any complaints to the borrower and they're not addressed, of course, ADB can be copied and ADB will intervene and be involved in that. Thank you. Next slide. Okay. So a quick snapshot of the relationship between ADB, the executing agency, or called the borrower, the government, and in this case, we're talking about consulting services, so the consultant. So the relationships between ADB, the borrower, and the contractor are all governed by ADB's staff instructions. The borrower is responsible for the procurement and all procurement transactions. ADB, as I mentioned, is responsible for selecting consultants only in technical assistance, unless, of course, the government requests on an exceptional basis. And we oversee all procurement activities, but we never procure goods or works for the borrower. In the last 12 months, there's been an exception to that due to the COVID-19 pandemic and us having to be involved to support our respective countries. But generally speaking, we do not undertake the procurement of goods or works. So our legal relationship is in the grant agreement that is between, a contractual relationship is in the grant agreement, which is between the ADB and the respective borrower executing agency. And then any contracts that are signed between the executing agency, borrower, and the consultant, ADB is not party to that contract. So we provide support to the government, but we're not party to the contract that is signed. Next slide, please. So the use of individual consultants and firms. We have, as I mentioned, the country's partnership strategy and the regional corporation strategy. During the phase of that preparation, an individual consultants can be hired to provide support in that. And then at the concept stage, individual consultants are hired to provide support to that. And during the preparation phase, which is the feasibility study and the technical assistance and loan processing, we have consulting firms and or individuals that are hired. After the preparation, you have the loan approval and the signing, and that is when the project becomes effective. And after the approval, you have the implementation, which is really when we're talking about large firms coming in and then undertaking the work. So it's the implementation where you'll have the detailed engineering design, the supervision, and the monitoring. And that is done by consultants, suppliers, and contractors. And then the final stage is the evaluation. And in that specific instance, we have consulting firms and or individuals that are hired to provide support to that. Next slide, please. Okay. So I'm going to be providing you with just the basic overview of our consulting services, the different procedures we have, the different methods. Thank you. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So the types of consultants. We have consulting firms and we have individual consultants. And these are under the technical assistance loan and grants. And then we have staff consultants, and that is ADB, that comes directly from the ADB staffing budget. Now, recruitment can either be undertaken nationally or internationally. The definition of an international may be from any ADB member country. And it can be global if there's no eligibility restrictions. So in certain projects, we have no eligibility restrictions, which mean that it can be from a non-ADB member country. Now, what I would like to say is that even though the recruitment may be international, it does not preclude a national firm from winning. So if there is a project in, I use the Philippines because I cover the Philippines, but if there's a country, a project in the Philippines, a recruitment and it's international and a Philippine firm does submit a proposal and is the top ranked firm, they can be awarded a contract. So it doesn't preclude nationals from partaking and being awarded contracts. In firm contracts, team members can be from any country, unless of course they're sanctioned. So for some of you that might be familiar with our old guidelines, we had a restriction whereby if a firm is awarded a contract, the key members, the key consultants within that contract had to be from an ADB member country. But in our new policies and regulations, that has been removed. So now it can be from any country. A firm is national if it's legally incorporated in the developing member country. And an individual is national if they are a citizen of the developing member country or if they have a legal right to reside, work, and live in that country. Next slide, please. So we have a schedule here of the firm consultant recruitment. So first of all, during the project cycle, we'll establish the specific needs that are required for the service. After which there's an advertisement, and that's normally approximately 14 days, which is the minimum. We then have from the advertising, or what we call the request for expression of interest, we have a shortlisting. And after we've shortlisted, there will be a short list of firms that are identified as the best to provide the services. And then those firms will tender for the request for proposal, and they will prepare a technical and price proposal. And that duration is anywhere from 15 to 35 days. Once we receive the proposals, or once the executing agency receives the proposal, there is the evaluation, which is a two-stage process, followed by the contract negotiation. Now that can be either face-to-face or through correspondence. Of course, over the last year and a half, it's been through correspondence due to the pandemic. And then afterwards, once the negotiations have concluded, then we have the contracting and notice to proceed. Next slide, please. Thank you. So an overview of our different procurement methods. We have quality and cost-based selection, quality-based selection, consultants qualification selection, fixed budget, and least cost, as well as direct contracting, which I always say is not procurement because you're just directly identifying a firm. So quality and cost-based selection is the preferred method that we usually use. It follows a two-stage process and a two-envelope approach, and there's a weight score. Over the last couple of years, what we normally have is the technical is 80 or 90, and the financial is either 20 or 10. So 80, 20 or 90, 10 technical and financial weight out of 100 points. After that, we have the quality-based selection, which is basically you're looking at the quality and not the price. And that's usually used where for highly complex and specialized projects, instances where comparison of financial proposals is difficult. We have consultants qualification selection, which is for small consulting services, which is generally $200,000 US or less. And that doesn't follow, it's a more expedited process because we go out for expressions of interest, we receive the expressions of interest, and then we request for the top ranked firm from the evaluation to provide a technical and financial proposal. We evaluate that, undertake the contract negotiations and sign. So it's a much faster process because you're not going out to advertise and the RFP. We have the fixed budget selection, which is the process is exactly the same as the quality and cost-based selection. The only difference is that the EA or ADB will list the maximum amount. So let's say the maximum amount is 500,000. They will list the maximum amount is 500,000. So any proposal that comes in over that amount will automatically be rejected. You'll normally see the fixed budget selection is done at the end of a project when there's limited funds availability. We have the least cost selection, which is used for small assignments of standard nature. And then we have direct contracting, which can be accepted if it falls within the justifications that we have in our procurement regulations. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm cognizant of time, so I will maybe run through these relatively quickly. And then, of course, I know the presentation will be shared with you, and if you have any questions, please, you may contact me after for further elaboration. So all opportunities are advertised on the CMS website, and the shortlist is published. We have full simplified or via data proposal. All recruitment is done through our standard bidding documents, which focuses on the quality of the evaluation. We have TORs that can either be input or output based. And we have two forms of contract, either time-based or lump sum. And sometimes what we'll find is there's a hybrid of those two. I mentioned CMS is used for ADB TA services, EA systems used for loans and grants, and member eligibility debriefing and ADB review. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, So just some quick points to look at when you're approaching ADB contracts. Consider the individual consulting opportunities. Understand the project and the background of the project and the executing agency. It's really important to know the executing agency and understand their expectations. Identify partners that you could have a partnership with that would be able to add value to your proposal. Leverage on experience that you have with similar institutions. What's important is also considering if external specialists will strengthen your team or not, and understanding the cost of doing business. A perfect example is taxes. Thank you. Next slide. So finding information and opportunities. Next slide, please. How to find information on our website and working with us. I provided here 2 links, so it'll be easy for you to click on them afterwards and have a look. I touched on this in the beginning of the presentation. All of our information is online, and you will be able to find information pertaining to the countries, the projects, the procurement and the procurement plans, and how to find potential business opportunities. Okay. And this website, if you click on working with us, underneath you have procurement and outreach, which will provide information on the operational procurement, institutional procurement, business opportunities, outreach, and projects and tenders. Next slide, please. So we have a business center, and business center website, and when you click on consultants, it provides you with quite a lot of information of how-tos, policies and regulations, the specific procedures and guidelines, as well as the standard bidding documents and forms. And as I mentioned, it's really important to try to familiarize with these documents and our policies and regulations because it would help you build a stronger proposal. Next slide, please. So when you go onto ADB's procurement website, you will have operational procurement, and at the far left side, you'll have consulting services. Once you click on that, there'll be additional information that we will be able to provide you with regards to our policies and procedures. Next slide, please. We also have an ADB procurement dashboard, which gives you an overview of the respective countries, the monetary amount and types of services, be it goods, works, or consulting services. Next slide, please. And so this is something that's really important, and we try to touch on. If your firm has not already been contracted through ADB finances and doesn't have experience, what's really important is that you go onto our CMS website and you register. You can register to receive alerts of all consulting opportunities. So instead of having somebody constantly checking the CMS website, once you register your firm and you register for alerts specifically, you will then be receiving notices of consulting opportunities that arise. And of course, that would be extremely useful to understand, the different recruitment that's being undertaken. All advertising of consulting opportunities, both ADB and the executing agency, the borrower, is published on CMS. And the RFP process, the request for proposal process for ADB administered contracts, is through our CMS website. So it's a great tool because you'll be able to go on there and really get a good general overview of our projects and specific projects and specific recruitment. Next slide, please. Okay, so This provides you with a snapshot of consulting opportunities and where you can find them. Next slide, please. Okay. I'll run through these last slides really quickly. Consulting, expressive interest, things that you should consider when you're going to prepare a proposal. Look at the eligibility, consider whether or not you want your firm can do it alone or whether you'd like to associate with a joint venture. Look at the capacity to complete and deliver those respective services, your relevant technical experience in that specific service, your geographical experience, as well as your experience with the government and specifically that executing agency, and your value added. Next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. So as I mentioned, all of our recruitment is done through CMS. So it's really good for you and your firm to familiarize yourself with the system. And we actually have a CMS tutor that will provide you with information on how the site works and how to maneuver through it. So it provides frequently asked questions and other advice on how to use the system, step-by-step instructions to take you through each step of the process, and contact details for CMS support. One thing I want to touch on, and it's really critical, is that this is an electronic system, and therefore there are glitches that happen, sometimes through the CMS and sometimes through, unfortunately, internet connectivity inside of the consulting firm that is trying to prepare a proposal, or just issues with uploading the documents. So it's really important that if you are submitting a proposal through CMS, ADB strongly recommends that you submit that proposal with ample amount of time before the deadline, because if you encounter any issues or glitches, and which inadvertently results in you not being able to provide your proposal within the deadline, it'll be rejected. And there's no way for us to extend that deadline. So please take that into consideration. Over the last couple of months, we've had a lot of issues with regards to internet connectivity or issues uploading documents. Those are not from the CMS website usually. And we also have a support system. So when you start uploading those documents, let's say 5 or 6 hours before the deadline, if you encounter any issues, you can immediately contact them, and they are extremely responsive. So they'll help you through the process to ensure that you're able to submit your proposal in time. So with that, I thank you for your time. I know I ran a little bit over, but I hope that this information was useful. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and I'll be able to provide you with additional information or clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lila. I think I understand that we can have a 5-minute long Q&A session after your presentation, I think. So it will be good if you can stay about 5 minutes for the Q&A.
Of course.
Again, thank you for your concise but comprehensive overview of ADB's procurement system. And please let me reiterate that for K agencies, please take your time to be familiarized with the system. Because for those who haven't tried the ADB project earlier, I mean, you still need to, I know it seems that we use a lot of acronym today, like a CMS, EA, CSRN, but you can maybe please, I mean, given the interest of time, we are using a lot of acronyms. So please, understand us. And then I also understand that here there are so many potential consultants and contractors for ADB's project. So please feel free to share your queries through chat box or raise your hand. It will be good. Ms. Nila will stay about 5 minutes to respond any questions. Any? Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
There's
today-
one hand, but
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out which one it is. Sorry, Hongsu, I just got very excited to see the hand. But I think since there's only one, we can probably ask the person to speak right away, because
Sure.
I'm clicking on it and it's not working.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, I have one question.
sure.
We are very familiar with the CMS system of the ADB. During your earlier explanation on your subject, I have one question. Technical assistance services can be paid by the ADB directly, you said.
Correct.
Yeah, that's no problem. We have experience with that. So, but the borrower with the borrower project, sometimes we face the difficulties to get the final payment from the borrower. And while I watch the presentation slide, you said in this regard, the client can send the complaint to the borrower with a copy of the ADB, right?
This is correct, yes.
Yeah. So how we can, how ADB can help the consultant to get paid the final consulting services payment?
First of all, thank you for your question. I'm sorry that you've encountered situations where you had delayed in payment. You know, we strive not to have that. Now, depending on this, you know, respective project and that recruitment, there might be, there is a justification as to why the payment hasn't been made. So when there is a complaint and you copy ADB, we get involved and we communicate with the executing agency to try to understand why there is a delayed payment. And we try to support and try to expedite the process. And if there's anything that we can do from our side, then we do it. And if there's any concerns that the executing agency has, then we provide support and guidance on that too. So what we don't want you to be delayed in your payment. And so we really do, you know, I mentioned this in the presentation, but please, if you have any issues or complaints, copy ADB and we will get involved through supporting, first of all, understanding what the issues are with regards to the delayed payment, and then supporting to make sure that it's resolved and that you do receive your payment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
By the way, can you introduce shortly yourself? Who is you and where are you working on now?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. My name is Dongju Lee. I'm working for Doha Engineering. Doha Engineering. Yeah. So we have a lot of ADB projects too. So as I told, sometimes we have some difficulties to be paid the final payment. So that's why I'm asking this question. Also, thank you very much. It's very clear, and we will use these tips when we have difficulties again. At the moment, we don't have any problem. Thank you very much.
Okay. If I may just quickly interject just to mention something, and I touched on this in the presentation. There are cases where the borrower, the executing agency will ask ADB to do direct payments to the firm. So I mean, something to consider in future recruitments to see if that is something that the government would be interested in doing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. I know we are running out of time for the session 1, but I know this is one of the important session for the forum. So I think it would be good if you can have one more query from participant, if any question related to procurement and bidding or potential projects in ADB for TA or loan or grants. Ms. Lila clearly explained the difference between the client for the TA and loan and the client for ADB and borrowing countries. So I'm sure that we can understand the difference within the big picture, the project cycle, which will be maybe varied from a couple of years project, or sometimes I understand that it will be dragging for more than 7-8 years. So yeah. Okay, if there's no more questions, maybe then let me move to session 2. Thank you for the opening remark again, Mr. Lee and Mr. Roberts and Ms. Lilla. And let's move to session 2. And I'd like to introduce Ms. Lara, Urban Development Specialist, and Mr. Neil, Program Manager for CDIA Trust Fund in ADB for next 30 minutes. Please welcome Lara and Neil, and floor is yours.
Hello. My name is Lara Arjan. I am ADB Project Officer for Cities Development Initiative Asia, or CDIA for short. And I'm here today with my colleague, Neil Chatter, who is the Program Manager for CDIA. I'm very pleased to be here, and we're very excited to be here. And I would like to start my presentation right now. Yeah, and we're just waiting for it to pop up. Aldrin, you can go to the next slide, please. So CDIA was established in 2007 as a cooperation between the German government and ADB. And it is a multi-loaner trust fund, and it is managed by the Asian Development Bank. And currently it's implemented by ADB and Agence Française de Développement, or AFD. And we get our funding from Austria, France, Germany, Switzerland, and the European Union. And what do we do? It's pretty simple. What we do is, I just so that I tie a little bit with Leela's presentation, she had a place where there was the concept and there was the feasibility study. We come in the middle between the concept and the feasibility study, where we work with cities in order to build bankable projects that can be linked to downstream funding further down. So we work with secondary cities in the Asia Pacific region to develop infrastructure projects. And these infrastructure projects usually have the aim of poverty reduction, fighting climate change, improving the environment, or promoting good governance. Next slide, please, Aldrin. Thank you. So what do? We build a bankable project in collaboration with the city by hiring a firm on behalf of the city. So what we do is we do field assessments, we look into the projects, we scope out what the city needs, and then we develop terms of reference for the infrastructure projects that were listed. And then we supervise, we tender out these studies, and then we provide supervision for these studies and make sure that the quality is up to a certain standard. And we also, so these studies would be pre-feasibility studies. So they would have some financial analysis, they would have social and environmental safeguards. Sometimes they would have concept design, pre-concept design, and they would also have institutional and capacity development. So we look down at what the project is going to be and what capacities are there within these municipalities and these cities to implement the project later on. And then we have the project preparation study that is the final product of our intervention. And this project preparation study is done, as I said, on behalf of the city, and it's given to the city so they could continue with the downstream funding. Aldrin, next slide, please. So far, since 2007, we've worked in 117 cities and in 21 countries, and we've done 108 project preparation studies. And in terms of linking to finance, we have leveraged an estimated $11.4 billion in investment value. This map shows a little bit where we work. We used to be very concentrated in kind of Southeast Asia, East Asia, And now we're more moving towards, if you can see, we're moving towards more Central West Asia. So we're trying to diversify, and this is basically the map of everything that we have completed so far and everything that is ongoing. Aldrin, next slide, please. Okay, so what about the sectors? Well, we see that it's very wastewater management intensive, but we also have water supply at 18%, urban transport, solid waste management, flood and drainage management, urban renewal, social infrastructure, and power and energy efficiency. This doesn't necessarily mean that these are our preferences. This is usually, it's based and it's tailor-made based on the needs of the cities. And mainly the cities, that's where their needs are, but it doesn't mean that we're not keen on working in other sectors. So we are very keen on increasing the numbers and the percentages in the other sectors. Next slide, please, Albert. So how does the project preparation process work? Altogether, it takes around, I would say, 9 months to about a year. We start with project scoping, where we visit the cities. That was pre-COVID. Now post-COVID, it's different. We sit with the city, we look at their needs, and we help the city prioritize their infrastructure needs and scope out a project. Then the city provides, it's a very simple application, an application to CDIA, and then CDIA, once it's approved, the application, it goes through ADB processes as well, through 2 ADB committees. Once we see that the project is sound or the application is sound, we start with the TOR, and we get the approval for the TOR, and we start procuring the consultants. So that's where what Leila talked about in terms of the CMS, that's where we announce them. So even if CDIA is a trust fund, but it is managed by ADB, and therefore it does follow ADB procurement procedures. But if the project, as I said at the beginning, it is also implemented by Agence Française de Développement. So if any project is funded by Agence Française de Développement, it goes through Agence Française de Développement procurement processes. But usually, so there are 2 places where you can find CDIA projects announced. One is on the ADB CMS system, and the other area would be on Agence Française de Développement announcement systems or web page. But also, so you have these 2 areas, but also CDIA webpage has all the opportunities posted. We procure the consultants, and then there's the mobilization kickoff, the inception report, and then we have the interim report and the final report. This is done in very close collaboration between the cities themselves, but also the downstream funder. The downstream funder at CDIA can be anybody. So it is ADB sometimes, but it can be Agence Française de Développement, but it also can be KfW, the World Bank. It can be local governments as well, central governments, or private-public partnerships. So we're very flexible in terms of where the downstream is. And we do follow this kind of process to prepare a project. And the project preparation study itself takes from 6 to 8 months. So we're very quick in terms of mobilization and getting these studies ready for any downstream funder. So after this, I'm going to tell my colleague Neil to take over, and he will take you through the rest. He will talk about, give you examples of CDIA projects and the pipeline. And Neil, I'm moving to you, please.
Thanks, Lau. Good afternoon, everybody. So on to the next slide, please. Okay, so what I just want to do briefly is to take you through our ongoing projects so you get a feel for what CDIA does and what we're all about. And as Lara said, Cities Development Initiative Asia, it's all about cities. CDIA works for cities, with cities, in cities. It's all about helping the cities go forwards and develop the livability for their citizens. Now, at present, we've got quite a wide range of projects going on. And just wanted to show you here, so we're working from 3 cities in Laos, we're working in Dushanbe in Tajikistan, risk management or disaster risk management project in the Philippines, We're looking at metro connectivity in Tbilisi, in Georgia, flood management in Vietnam, a new sewerage project about to start in Chattogram in Bangladesh, further urban green growth and climate resilience in Dong Ha, a ferry project in the Philippines, and a sustainable urban transport project in Yerevan in Armenia. As I said, the downstream funding agency can be quite varied, and in this particular case, at this snapshot in time, we got a variety of downstream ADB funded projects, AFD funded projects, and indeed private sector stroke government. So let's just give you a feel of where we are. On to the next slide, please. Obviously, we have a complete conveyor belt of projects. That's the ones we're currently doing, but also for later this year and going into next year, we have a whole pipeline of projects which are continuously coming on. So what we have here, we got solid waste management projects coming up in Vietnam, bus priority in Vietnam. We're looking at a new cable car crossing project between Nong Khai and Vientiane. Fecal sludge management in the Philippines, housing in Bhutan, a new project coming up in Madhya Pradesh where we haven't quite yet sorted out what sector we'll be focusing on. We got a big meeting coming up on that fairly soon. Water supply extension in Kuna and livable cities in Pakistan. Again, a variety of countries, a variety of downstream funders. Next slide, please. Very, very briefly, just to take you through a few more details, I say we can pass on the presentation to you after, but just a few of the projects we've been carrying out recently. One we just finished in Uzbekistan. We looked at urban development, integrated urban development in 3 cities, primarily looking at water, sanitation, solid waste management, and livability. Next slide, please. This is one of my favorite projects where we looked at the bus sector in Tbilisi, in Georgia. They're very heavily car dependent, and we joined with the city of Tbilisi to help them move to more sustainable public transport. And to do that, we helped them look at the bus systems, develop BRT, bus priority lanes, signaling management, this sort of thing, to improve the flow of traffic throughout the city. Actually, as a quick aside, this is one of the positive things which happened during the pandemic because the roads were empty, and we used the opportunity of the pandemic to actually build lots of bus lanes during that time. Next slide, please. Pakistan, again, we looked at right up in the north of Pakistan in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. We looked at water supply, sanitation, solid waste management, and again, livability in 3 different Pakistan cities. Next slide, please. Myanmar, this is a major project where we're looking at water supply and a long pipeline coming in from the north of the city, right into the center, looking at water treatment and really developing the water supply of Yangon. Unfortunately, the project hasn't been able to go forward at the moment because of the coup there, but it was a very interesting project. It's quite a major one. In this particular case, we looked at feasibility and preliminary design as well. So next slide, please. Now, you would have noticed from those projects, the ones I presented are fairly standard infrastructure projects. And I think this is one of the reasons we're really interested in working with Korea, because we need to bring in much more innovative, high-tech type projects. So I'm really quite excited as we go into this week to find out more about what you're doing and the sort of things you do. So we can start developing our projects from the more standard infrastructure to the more high-tech innovative aspects. So I'm very much looking forward to the meetings we have this week. Now, the key points are working with CDA to give you a feel of what we're about and what we're looking for. As you've already gathered, everything we do is city focused. We're there to help them. We have this common objective of helping the cities to move forward with their projects and ensuring finances in place, whether it be ADB, World Bank, JICA, whoever. A key aspect for CDIA work is to form really strong relationships with the cities, and that is key to everything we do. Under normal circumstances, we really would expect our consultants to work in the cities, not in country or home offices. We like to get our consulting teams on board, work with us, and be in the cities with good, strong daily relationships with city officials. So we share our experience of worldwide development with these officials on a daily basis. I'm not joking when I say CDA military eat, sleep and breathe urban development. And we really expect the consultants working with us in our teams to have the same approach. Next slide, please. There we go. Right, for the money into the CDA projects coming from the trust fund, we use ADB's CMS for the procurement, and PPFD are very much involved in everything we do to help the contract preparation. Now, we evaluate tenders on the basis of the technical proposal only. We're looking at the quality. The cost ends up with a maximum budget, so cost doesn't come into the selection. This means you can really focus on getting strong teams with good quality people without having to worry about being undercut under, say, a QCBS. We're really after quality, and that's the thing I need to stress. We are looking for really dynamic, energetic teams that are capable of bringing fresh, new, innovative ideas. Excuse me for saying it, we're not looking for team members with greater than 40 years experience. Too many consultants who apply to us come up with super long CVs of people who have been working for 40 years. What we're after is people with fresh, energetic ideas. And we try to evaluate the proposals we receive on that basis by looking at the real picture. We really place high value on the teams bidding to us being fully integrated international national teams. One of the key objectives of CDA is to help build capacity in cities and help build capacity in the consultant capability of countries. People like myself, we shouldn't be needed in the future. So what we really try to do is help get the national capacity up to speed. Once we have a consultant on board with us, we really treat the consultants as part of the CDA team. Consultants working with us use our business cards in all the work you do. And we work very much as a team. Next slide, please. Briefly, just to say, this is us. You've already met Lara, you've got myself, and this is the rest of our team. We're currently spread all around the world due to the pandemic, and we're all working from home. But despite pandemic, CDA is carrying on regardless. We're doing our existing projects, we're getting new projects on the pipeline, and we're developing way into the future on the things we're going to be doing. So we're very much active. It's business as normal. Okay, it's a bit different, but we're still going forwards. Next slide, please. In the presentation, we're giving you these links. Please check out some of the links so you can see what we've done, particularly the one in Tbilisi in Georgia. We show you how we work with cities and how our consultants come in, how we interact with the key officials. But please, once you have time, please have a look through those. Next slide, please. And there we go. Thank you very much for your time today. Highly appreciate it. And very much look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Lara and Neil, for your informative presentation for what CDI is doing, has been doing, and including the procurement and ongoing project. Maybe for recap, CDI is focusing on the secondary cities, and probably for those who are not familiar with the entire stretch in ADB, the major project, you can also, start with the project in CDIA. And, Lara and Neil also already shared the plan ones, and Vietnam and Philippines and Bhutan and Pakistan, etc., for both infrastructure and urban development project, including affordable housing. And I recall one of the discussions with Neil and Lara, and based on the team's experience, not that much, applications or the contractors or consultants from K agencies. So please reconsider, because we know that you are all energetic and active and positive to support the secondary cities and ADB's DMCs. So yeah, that is the, please let me, the reiterated message from me. And thank you again. And please let me move to our final session. And Lara and Neil, I will come back to you for the Q&A after the session 3. So for the last one, the last session, please let me invite Mr. Manoj Sharma, who is the Chief of Urban Sector Group in SDCC, for the overview of ADB's Strategy 2030 and Operational Part number 4 for livable cities for next 20 minutes. Mr. Manoj, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hong-Soo. Sorry, just give me a minute. My laptop crashed and I have to restart. So sorry about it. Can you see the slides, Hong-Soo?
Yes, we can see the slides, and please take your time. Yeah. Yeah, we can see you and your slide as well.
Okay,
yeah.
so I'm not able to see the slides, but that's fine. I think I can carry on. So yeah, thank you, Hong-Soo. Greetings from ADB. Sorry about this small mishap. I am Manoj Sharma, Chief of Urban Sector Group in ADB. So let me also start by conveying our sincere appreciation to the government of Republic of Korea and the ADB team, including the EAKPF team, for organizing this Urban Development Forum. I am delighted to be here, and it's my pleasure to talk about ADB's policies and operational plan on livable cities, as Hong-Soo mentioned, and also potential collaboration in the urban sector with the Korean businesses and agencies. Next slide, please. I'm not sure if I can see the next slide, but let me try. Is it the slide on overview of the presentation?
Yes, Manoj.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. All right, yeah. So here is the outline of the presentation. So I'll talk about the urbanization trends in Asia and the Pacific. Then I'll briefly discuss ADB Strategy 2030, Livable Cities Operational Plan, and the post-COVID-19 new normal, which provides guidance to the cities. I'll also give details of ADB's urban sector portfolio and potential for collaboration with Korean private sector and institutions. Specifically, I'll talk about business opportunities in ADB's urban sector. Next, please. This is on urbanization in Asia and the Pacific, right? Okay, I hope so. So urbanization, especially in the developing countries in our region, is one of the most significant global trends, and it's going to define the future. So urban population in Asia and the Pacific increased from about 20% of the region's population in 50s to about 50% by 2020. And that's a substantial increase. So just to determine how much investments are required in the urban sector, we conducted a study in ADB recently. And our estimate is 26 trillion US dollars from 2016 to 2030. And this translates to 1.7 trillion US dollars per year on infrastructure, which will be required to maintain growth, eradicate poverty, and respond to climate change. As all of us can see, this is a huge investment requirement, but it's also a big opportunity for all of us, for ADB and for businesses to support our developing member countries. Next, please. I think this is the slide on ADB Strategy 2030. It's
yes.
Okay. This is our long-term strategic framework, and our vision is to have and achieve a prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable Asia and the Pacific, while sustaining our efforts to eradicate extreme poverty. So how do we propose to add value to our stakeholders? That's finance plus plus. So the first plus is on knowledge, and second plus is for partnerships. So in short, finance, knowledge, and partnerships. These are the three elements of finance plus plus through which we propose to add value to our stakeholders in member countries. Next, please. So this slide gives more details on ADB's 7 operational priorities. I think you can see the 7 boxes with different operational priorities. I'm not going to go into the details, just suffice to mention them. The first one is on reducing poverty and inequalities. Then we have gender equality, climate and disaster resilience, and enhancing environmental sustainability. These are the first three priorities on the top of this slide. I'll talk more about operational priority 4 on making cities more livable. And then the other three priorities are on rural development and food security, strengthening governance and institutional capacity, and regional cooperation and integration. All the 7 important operational priorities help us guide our operations and implement Strategy 2030. Next, please. This one is on OP4, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so this particular slide is on operational priority 4 on making cities more livable, as I mentioned earlier, out of the 7 operational priorities. And this sets out the direction and approach for us in ADB to help our member countries build livable cities. And so what's the definition of livable cities for us? As Robert Guile mentioned in his opening remarks, cities which are green, competitive, inclusive, and resilient are in short livable cities for us. But this also means that we support the cities to develop the right institutions, right policies, which means the right enabling environment to become more livable. If you look at the 3 important pillars under this operational priority 4 on livable cities, the first one is on infrastructure and services. Second one is on urban planning and financial sustainability. And the last pillar is on urban environment, climate resilience, and disaster management of cities. Next, please. Recently, after COVID-19, ADB published a guidance note on Build Back Better and to guide cities on how they can address the issues of COVID-19 in the short term and also medium to long term. So as we all know, cities are at the forefront of COVID-19 crisis. Most of these cases are occurring in cities. So it's quite evident that the impacts of the pandemic have been felt mostly by residents in cities. So post-pandemic, cities are going to see lasting and irreversible changes. And these will range from cities' planning systems and densities to economic and community structures and social behaviors, and I think in all aspects of urban governance, as we are witnessing right now in various cities all over the region. Just to state the obvious, cities across the world will need to be more resilient to future shocks caused not only by climate change and natural disasters, but also by pandemics and other similar disruptive events. So this guidance note on making cities more livable and post-COVID-19 new normal has 6 different new normal approaches. I would request you to have a look at the guidance note and would like to just mention in short the 6 new normal approaches here. The first one is on inclusivity through greater social protection measures for the most vulnerable groups. Second new normal approach is on urban services and infrastructure, but using technologies and digital solutions, which will appeal more to EA, KPF, and private sector in Korea with their strong expertise in technologies and digital solutions. The third new normal approach is on revisiting urban planning systems to strategically incorporate lessons from COVID-19. We heard about developing secondary cities through trust funds like Cities Development Initiative for Asia, CDIA. So here is an opportunity to decongest big metros and focus on small and medium towns and secondary cities using resources from trust funds like CDIA. The fourth new normal approach is on financial sustainability and building capacities of urban institutions. This remains absolutely important even from pre-COVID days, but has become much more relevant now, even in this post-COVID-19 situation. The fifth new normal approach is on healthy and environmentally sustainable cities. And finally, the sixth new normal approach is on building resilient cities which are able to absorb shocks and stresses due to pandemics, disasters, and climate change. Next slide, please. I think this slide gives an overview of ADB's urban sector portfolio. Or is it a slide before that?
Yeah, way forward slide. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Hong Soo. So in terms of the lessons from COVID-19 for our cities in Asia Pacific region, what we see is that urban sector will continue to grow even post pandemic. but livable cities demand will see a shift. Firstly, in the urban planning process, we will see the lessons from COVID-19 getting incorporated. We'll also see adoption of greater social protection measures for the most vulnerable groups, because the issues and challenges and the problems of vulnerable groups have been highlighted during the pandemic situation, particularly in the developing member countries. We'll also see improvement of urban environment, including uninterrupted urban services getting much more prominence in the urban planning and urban development process. Measures to strengthen financial sustainability, financial inclusion, and building capacities of urban institutions and other stakeholders will also gain importance. And finally, the increased use of technologies and digital solutions in cities on all aspects of urban governance will be very critical in a post-pandemic situation. So in short, what we can say is that cities can turn this crisis into an opportunity and work towards being more livable. And through a shift in their priorities and projects and investments and policies. Next, please. So this is a slide, I think, which gives an overview of our ADB's urban sector portfolio. This has increased from about 1 billion per year in 2011 to about 2 billion per year in 2020. We expect the urban sector portfolio to further grow in ADB as it is the fastest growing sector in ADB. Next slide, please. If we look at ADB's urban sector commitments in 2020, urban water supply is still the largest component at 37%, followed by urban sewerage and sanitation at 30%. So these become the most important sector in terms of volumes. An important point to note here is that portfolio includes substantive soft component of urban policy, institutional and capacity development at around 9%, which means more and more consulting opportunities in the soft aspects of urban development. In terms of regional distribution, South Asia captures the maximum share at 42%, followed by Southeast Asia at 16%. Next, please. So if we are looking at business opportunities in ADB's urban sector projects, I would like to draw your attention to the two types, which Leela also explained in pretty good detail. The first opportunity is in terms of the contracts awarded by ADB, and through two instruments, what we call Transaction Technical Assistance TRTA and Knowledge and Support Technical Assistance KSTA. And this is, as Hongsu mentioned, it would be nice to know ADB's language. So TRTAs and KSTAs generate opportunities for consulting services directly contracting with ADB. Similarly, business opportunities in client countries includes contracts awarded by the governments or the private sector in ADB's member countries. And these contracts would include civil works contracting, supply of equipment, consulting services for project implementation, design, and project management, but by the client governments, and also capacity development opportunities in consulting services through client governments. Next, please. This is business opportunities within ADB, right, Hongsu?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the business opportunities within ADB, just to give an assessment of the volume of opportunities in terms of transactional technical assistance, consulting services in the urban sector only. We saw around 14 million worth of contracts awarded in this year alone for consulting services in TRTAs or the transaction technical assistance. And for the knowledge and support technical assistance, we saw around 22 million contracts awarded for consulting services. So roughly 36 million worth of contracts have been awarded by ADB in these two types of TAs in 2020 alone. Next, please. If you look at the business opportunities in member countries in ADB projects, that comes from three different types of contracts, as I mentioned: civil works, equipment, and consulting services. In terms of volumes, we can see civil works take around 90% of overall opportunities, while equipment is small at 2% and consulting services at 8%. And these are the contracts awarded by client countries. And if you look at the projects committed in the urban sector from 2017 to 2020, the last 4 years, it's about 4 billion worth of contracts which have been awarded by our client countries in the last 4 years on the urban sector projects. That means huge opportunities of contracts, and all three types of contracts: civil works, equipment, and consulting services, and by member countries. That's a substantial opportunities for consulting firms and civil works construction companies looking for opportunities in our member countries. Next slide, please. Is it the list of projects or the
This is the bar chart for 2020
all right.
urban sector work.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Sorry for it. So this slide gives the urban sector committed projects in 2020 distributed across countries. If you can see the bars, the three bars which are standing out are for India, China, and Georgia, which are the top three countries in terms of commitment amounts. Next, please. Here is the slide which gives urban sector projects committed in 2020 with an amount of 2 billion. Actually, there are 3 slides, so I'll go for all 3 slides, which gives a list of urban sector projects which have been committed recently in 2020, which means there are potential opportunities for both consulting services and civil works opportunities. Hongsu, you may go to all 3 slides, please. So just want to mention that these projects range from water supply, wastewater, sanitation, solid waste management, including waste to energy, urban transport, including BRT, low carbon development, climate change resilience, and so many other sectors in what we say livable cities space. And all these potential opportunities come from 3 types of contracts, as I mentioned earlier, and as Leela also explained: civil works, equipment, and consulting services, and from both types of employers from ADB and client countries. If you could go to the slide for 21, please. So this is a slide which gives urban sector projects likely to be committed in 2021, distributed across countries. We can see 3 bars standing out again. India, Bangladesh, and Uzbekistan are the top 3 countries in terms of projected commitment amounts. Next slide, please. So here is a list of urban sector projects likely to be committed in 2021. It's a strong pipeline of about $2.6 billion US projects planned for 2021. If we look at the next slide, which gives urban sector projects likely to be committed in 2022, distributed across countries, we can see that there are 4 prominent bars in this bar chart. India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Vietnam are the top 4 countries in terms of the likely committed amount for 2022. Next slide, it gives a list of urban sector projects likely to be committed in 22. Again, I'll reiterate, it comes from both types of clients, ADB and client countries. And it comes from all 3 types of contracts: civil works, equipment, and consulting services, and a range of projects which I mentioned earlier. So just covering these last 2 slides for the year 22 list of projects. If you can go to the last slide, please. So in summary, our region in Asia and the Pacific needs huge investments in the urban sector to make our cities more livable. ADB Strategy 2030 and Livable Cities Operational Plan reiterate importance of cities and the importance of the sector for us in ADB and for our developing member countries. I also want to say that ADB's urban sector portfolio is increasing at a fast pace, generating more and more opportunities for client countries and ADB in terms of consulting services and civil works. And finally, this COVID-19 crisis can be turned into an opportunity for green, resilient, and inclusive recovery. We can all work together to help our cities reduce inequalities, make them safe, healthy, environmentally sustainable, resilient, and inclusive in a post-COVID-19 world. So we look forward to working together with agencies and private sector in Korea. Thank you very much. Over to you, Hong-soo.
Thank you, Manos, for the brief on ADB's long-term strategy, which is in line with SDGs 2030 as well as the ongoing and planned urban project for last year, this year, and next year for the 3 years. We could understand the importance of full awareness of ADB's strategy, including post-COVID-19 for making cities more livable, for not only for ADB's next 10 years vision, but also the implementation, the actual implementation on site at ADB's developing member countries. And we could also understand the required cross-sector and cross-thematic approaches from the other 6 operational priorities under ADB strategy 2030. So, I mean, for the honorable participants, please take your time to digest. I know there are a lot of information provided today, so take your time to digest and catch up the big picture by the project type or project topic and the region as well as highlighted and shared by Manos for the 3 countries and 4 countries, I mean, in different year. And then as you can see, the potential project with the budget, I'm sure that we are going to share all the slide to the participants. You can see, you know, I mean, the budget for urban sector group in 2020 next year is almost doubled compared to the last year, 2020. And then, if I'm not wrong, it's this is except it's not included the transport sector groups portfolio as well. So if you could include, I'm sure that some of you are focus on the transport sector as well. So you can see more aggressive project pipeline for this year and next year as well. Thank you again, Manos, for your presentation. And then let's move. Let's have a final Q&A session before we close the forum. Any questions or comments about the last 2 sessions or the first session by the participants would be appreciated. Please use chat box or raise your hand. Yeah, I know. Usually, Korean people are shy. Same to me. So please let me, since there is no query at the moment, please allow me to have first one to Manos. I know you have already briefed very comprehensive way, but is there any expected or focused area after the pandemic in urban sector in ADB's DMCs, developing member countries? I mean, it would be good if you can elaborate further on ADB's key focus area in urban sector for next few years. This is my first question to Manos, and then maybe after that, maybe I can have one question to Neil and Lara, and which is how the K agencies could be involved for those areas. I mean, I know you already explained the brief, but is there any some not hidden strategy, but just I mean comprehensive strategy for them to be involved for those areas? I mean, the opportunities in CDI project focusing on municipal and city level approaches based on your experience working with Korean agencies. Thank you. And Manos, can you respond first?
Yeah. Thank you, Hong-soo. So first of all, let me say that during my operations experience in ADB, I had the pleasure of working with several Korean companies, both in consulting services as well as in construction industry, and it was always a pleasant experience. So my personal experience is pretty good in working with Korean companies, and we look forward to having more and more opportunities for them to work on ADB projects. There's also a great advantage of having Korean companies in ADB projects because they come with their strong experience, expertise, and knowledge of very high level of quality implementation of urban development projects back home in Korea. And such good practices and lessons are shared with our member countries. And our member countries highly appreciate contribution of Korean businesses, private sector, and other agencies. So that's, I also want to thank the government of Korea for helping ADB and member countries through regular capacity building and institutional strengthening programs and regular training programs. So many of our agencies in Korea have supported our member countries and cities in particular through trainings and capacity building programs over the last several years. So I take this opportunity to thank them also in this regard. To answer your specific question, Hongsu, I took 2 minutes extra just to give that background. In terms of post-COVID-19 new normal situation, I've talked about the 6 new normal approaches, but the most important for me is the institutions and financial sustainability of cities. During the COVID-19 situation, we saw cities and particularly the utilities going through financial distress, both in terms of lower revenues, higher expenditures, and poor efficiencies. So now is the time to support our cities, particularly the utilities and other agencies providing urban services in terms of improving their financial sustainability and building capacity of these institutions and other stakeholders in cities. And this requires a lot of support from ADB and also our consulting firms and construction agencies for the entire spectrum of urban governance. This would require our support for preparing urban projects like what CDIA does, to preparing detailed engineering designs and procurement documents, and that will require knowledge of procurement systems like Leela mentioned today, or implementation of projects through design and construction supervision consultants and project management consultants. And the most importantly for me is to ensure operational sustainability of the assets created under these projects. So in short, the entire project cycle, starting with project identification to successful operations of assets created under these projects, will need more and more support from all of us. And we look forward to working together to provide such support to our member countries. I'll stop here, but happy to answer more questions. Thank you. Over to you, also.
Yeah, thank you, Manos, for your comprehensive response. Yeah, I understand that the institutions is one of the key area, and then to, how do I say, supports and for the sustainable financial financial sustainability of the cities, and including maybe the 3 T's, tax transfer, and what is the other one?
Tariffs.
Yeah, tariffs. Yeah. So, and then, as you know, in Korea, there is so powerful, so many powerful CSO and quasi institutions under central government level and city government level as well. So definitely, I think it will be a good comment. And then if we can work with Korean agencies to how do I say, to share, to transit the knowledges to the cities and the governments of the DMCs, it will be, yeah, helpful to developing member countries. Yeah, thank you, Manos. Yeah, and Lara and Neil, can you respond quickly.
Sure.
Yeah.
If I remember the second project, the second question, but I think if I remember correctly, and you can probably correct me if I'm not, if I didn't get it right, but you've asked what are the areas that we're interested in, right? In terms of engaging with Korean expertise and how we kind of want to do it, right?
Yep.
Yes, okay. So as we explained first for the how, we need to go through ADB's procurement process. So that's kind of, I mean, it's good because it's going to be fair and transparent. So we're not really in a situation where we can sort of just go to a company and say, we would love you to work on project X or Y. But in terms of what kind of expertise and kind of where we're coming from, I think Neil mentioned in the presentation that we're very keen to sort of engage with Korean government, Korean companies and engage with that expertise. And from my perspective, I think because of the strides Korea has done since sort of the 1950s, 60s, where they went from a developing country, they still remember what the challenges are. And this is why it's very interesting to hear from companies that have seen the whole sort of conveyor belt of being a country where there were many challenges and how they addressed the challenges. And I think when we go in with Korean counterparts, we're more credible. It's not like somebody speaking in theory. It is somebody who has kind of had overcome immense challenges, and they were able to build something up, and they understand and they would be sympathetic to other countries' challenges. So I think for us, that's very, very interesting to see, and that's very interesting to present to the DMCs and the cities we work in. So for me, that's basically my perspective on this, but I would also want to sort of invite Neil to say a little bit in terms of, why, what kind of, and perhaps the part on what kind of expertise.
Yeah,
Neil?
thanks, Laura. Yeah, thank you. Also, just taking a step back, really, because there's various ways I'd like to be involved with Korean organizations. So firstly is upstream. CDA comes in at a certain point to help take a project forward, to study it, make it bankable. But what we find, sometimes we need to liaise and work with upstream organizations who have perhaps looked at the broader aspects of what's happening in a city or indeed a country. So we're having and developing close relationships with GGGI, who are based in Seoul, and they're creating projects which they can take a certain far. And now we're linking in with them to pick up from the work they've done and to take it forward. So we're very keen on working with organizations who have an overview of what is happening in cities, so we can work with them, pick it up and run with it. Going to the other end of the extreme, I would dearly love CDA to be preparing projects which are financed by Korea, whether it be the Korean government or private sector in Korea. For the middle bit, where CDA is involved, as Lara says, the key thing we do is to provide technical assistance to cities by providing consultants, and we take on consultants through either AFD or the ADB CMS. Now, when I look at it, in my 5 years with CDA, I don't think we've actually had a Korean consultant working with us, and I'd love that to change, quite frankly. And I think as we move into the more innovative aspects of the work we do, more livable cities, more technological solutions, I'm very much hoping that as we go forward over the next year or so, we get much more interest from Korean consulting companies who can bring whole new knowledge, a whole new dimension, a whole new energy to the work CDIA does, so we can share our experiences with you, learn from you, and adjust and come up with better, more appropriate projects to time with the overall direction in which we're trying to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Lara and Neil. Yeah, I thank you for really, how do I say, the warm remark for the Korean urban redevelopment experience. Yeah, I understand that many of the colleagues in ADB, we understand that Korea has a really successful transition for last 30 years from the low-income country to high-income country, and we are looking for the area for the collaboration from the Korean experience. I mean, irrespective of whether it's city level or central levels, we're okay with the different levels, because in DMCs they face the same issues and problems to be resolved. So yeah, okay, I can see one hand. Let me, okay, I cannot see the name, so it would be good if you can introduce yourself before your question to the Manos or Lara and Neil.
Okay, my name is Mr. Lee Dongju again, and I have a question to Mr. Neil regarding the selection of the consultant. Yeah, you said that the consultant selection is very, I mean, the key point is to CV of the expertise for the project. And you said it is not important of the 40 years experience is not important, rather than the, so the key issue is the, rather than the long-term experience, you should have energetic and creative characteristics. But I don't know how we can express these things in the CV, because the ADB has a formal the format for CV. So if we just follow the existing CV expression, we cannot show how this expertise has a innovative and creative idea for the project. So can you give us the good idea or how to express our competitive the CV expression?
Yeah, it's a very valid point. Thank you. Firstly, it's not just the CV, because obviously the methodology and the work schedule and the staff schedule has quite a bit to play in any proposal. Typically, the CVs would account for about 70% of the marks. Actually, it's a problem we have to face together, because I think for the good of cities and urban development in Asia, I think we have to be looking to the future, and I think we have to be bringing new talent into the area. So I think we actually share the problem with you. In the past, we would, in our terms of reference, actually list the staff we needed in the latter part of the terms of reference, and we would specify the number of years experience we're looking for. We've stopped doing that. We're trying to describe it in a slightly different way. So the number of years doesn't become the critical point. I think also so that's one aspect. The reason I say 40 is sometimes certain developing member countries would think, right, we need to have somebody with all this experience, and they give us long CVs. And quite frankly, when we see the CVs, it becomes obvious why that person's there, and we can take that into account when we do it. I think the CVs have to follow the ADB format. There's little choice about that, but you can also take some pages in the methodology and under organization to explain the rationale for the team you've put together. There are page limits because I think normally under CDA we'd have the simplified approach, so there'd be a 10-page methodology. I would certainly recommend using 9 pages for the technical and actually dedicating 1 page to describing the team and why you've brought that team together, the benefits of the individual team members, this sort of thing. Does that help?
Okay, thank you very much. And you know, as Mr. Hong, Mr. Lee said, Korean engineer or expertise has been through from the nothing to the current development society. So we have a lot of experience. So I would recommend that the ADB should admit the Korean domestic experience in a development market. Yeah, that's so what I want to ask you when you consider the evaluate the expertises experience, the Korean domestic experience should be recognized as experience. Thank you.
Fully agree with you. I fully agree. It should indeed be.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lee, for your comment, and thank you, Neil, for the response. Yeah, I'm sure that I understand that Lila left already, but maybe she can add some points for the procurement system as well. And as Neil and myself highlighted before, I mean, for CDI's past 5 years experience, it seems that no submission at all. I mean, at least, yeah, we need to get some applications to go through the ADB's procurement system, and then, yeah, it will be good if you can consider submitting the applications accordingly based on the ADB's procurement system. If you see the relevant project based on your experience and targets. And okay, we still have about 7 more minutes, and then I think you can ask anything about ADB and ADB's procurement system and CDIA, and then before that, I'm not sure. Please let me invite Mr. Hyung-yeol Lee or Seo-hae Shin, because they are working in EAKPF in ADB, and who are working with CDI's team for the preparation of this urban development forum. So Mr. Lee or Seo-hae, it will be good if you can add to improve the participation from the networking, or improve the collaboration between ADB and EAKPF or ADB and Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I'm very surprised to be invited suddenly by you. Yeah, this is basically a forum for Korean businesses and Korean agencies. So I was not willing to participate in this session, but if you insist, then actually this year the Korean Ministry of Economy and Finance and the ADB CDIA are trying a pilot program to support 2 projects amount of 1 million for project preparation for cities in Asia. So I hope we can share the project status of the 2 projects with Korean businesses or institutions through Korean KEXIM or other media. So I hope Korean potential consulting firms or businesses can participate in the bidding process to be hired as a consulting firm for those 2 projects. let me stop here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again, Mr. Lee. And I understand that World Bank, there is the collaboration project between the World Bank and Korean government. And then, this is the first initiative by EAKPF team and USG and CDI. So I'm also pleased to support this kinds of first initiative. In the meantime, I can see the hand raise from Korea Exim Bank. So can you proceed your questions?
Thank you, Mr. Lee. My name is Jeongwan Ryu. I'm the director for the Trust Fund Coordination and Advisory Team of the Korea Exim Bank. I have a question for Mr. Neil Chatter. I noticed that you mentioned that you have a preference for consultants on the ground, which I also absolutely agree with, considering how it can positively affect the upstream activities of the project. However, I think it may possess some disadvantages for Korean consultants, especially in this COVID-19 period, where dispatching consultants to the ground would pose some difficulties for them. So do you think there would be a possibility to consider the Korean consultants hiring local consultants in turn, which they can display their Korean technologies and expertise in such field, however, facing difficulties to dispatch consultants on the spot? Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the question. I guess what I'm really doing is presenting the pre and post pandemic situation, because I'm looking to the longer term here over the next few years. Under ideal non-pandemic conditions, we would hope that during any project, around 80 or 90% of our consultants' time would be spent in the city. And we really feel that that helps get the relationships with the city officials. It gets the energy, the momentum for the project going. Now, at the moment, under pandemic conditions, the disadvantage of not being able to get there is pretty much the same for all consultants. Because as things stand, we don't allow any international consultants to travel to the city. And that applies to all companies. So at the moment, all the work we're doing under CDIA is online. So frankly, it's the same for everybody. So I don't think there's any big disadvantage, particularly against Korean companies at the moment. What we're doing, and you probably, if you look at the presentation later, you'll see there's a greater emphasis on projects in places like Vietnam and the Philippines at the moment. And that's because what we're doing under pandemic, we're trying to focus more on the countries where we know the national capability is above average for developing member countries, because we're highly dependent on the national teams at the moment. And that's also why it's very important that the international and national components of teams which are presented to us in proposals are nicely blended, because we are very highly dependent on having good quality nationals. So yeah, hiring national consultants, perfectly fine. Indeed, I would suggest it's almost a requirement these days. Does that clarify?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Actually, we also have a program called the Economic Innovation Partnership Program, where we engage in upstream activities in developing countries, especially in the urban development sector. So it would be great to have a separate discussion with you in the near future, if there are any opportunity for collaboration. Okay, thank you.
I will be absolutely delighted to do that, because that would be a great way to kick off a relationship and go forwards. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, so I think that would be yeah. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Director Yu and Neil for your comment. And yeah, you can work with Neil and Lara for the detailed discussion as well. If there is no more queries, I think we are on time. And again, I really appreciate about the interesting brief queries and answers. And I strongly believe that we have a better understanding about ADB, what ADB is doing, and our urban area works. And although we are closing the day one now, I would say this is just beginning of the week-long program. And ADB's colleagues, including myself, would also learn about the advanced technologies through the next 4 days sessions, which will be provided by the K agencies with specific topics such as digital solutions for better service delivery in day 2, integrated water management in day 3, energy management in urban context in day 4, and green public transportation and new transit in day 5, the last day. Please let me close the session and see you tomorrow, hopefully. And again, thank you for all the organizers in ADB and governments of Korea and the institutions and private sectors in Korea who participated the sessions, and again, the honorable attendees for your active participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you.
Hongsu.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.